get on board the Bernier bus train. Come get on board the Bernier bus train. Once you hear that clickety-clack, there ain't no time for turning back. Oh, get on board the Bernier bus train. Good afternoon, USA, and welcome to a new episode of the Bernie or Bust Show. Emerson polling, November, so very recent, shows support for impeachment declines. All the things they're trying to tell us are important isn't important. Biden and Sanders lead the Democratic primary. New Emerson poll finds President Trump's approval has increased in the last month, a bounce from 43% in the last poll in October. Support for impeachment has flipped. There's less support for impeachment. The president's support in the Republican primary has increased. Another difference is in Real Clear polling, all of the matchups with Bernie and Trump. Bernie's the only one right now in front of Trump in this Emerson poll, and in the Real Clear average, Bernie is still defeating Trump, but by smaller margins, and so that's disturbing. So, how has impeachment affected Donald Trump's approval? How has impeachment affected Donald Trump's power vis-a-vis Bernie Sanders in a potential general election matchup? Impeachment, you almost think maybe that the people who are pushing impeachment are trying to keep Trump in power. Because if they don't want Bernie badly enough, then that would be a pretty smart move. I wonder if any other political commentators agree with that assessment. The economy is the number one issue for Republicans and independents, while for Democrats, health care ranked highest overall. The economy continues to be the most important issue for 1 in 3 voters in deciding who they will vote for president. Healthcare is the second most important at 18%, followed by immigration and social issues at 10% each. The environment and impeachment were next at 7%, with foreign policy being the least important issue at 3%. Bernie Sanders is surging. He has a 2% increase from October, and now joins Joe Biden at 27%. Senator Elizabeth Warren is down a point, and Mayor Pete is at 7%. What we're assuming is that Warren's and Buttigieg's have an overlap in their support, so that when Warren goes down, Pete goes up. When Pete goes down, Warren goes up. Andrew Yang rounds out the top 5 at 4%. All other candidates are below 4%. Sanders continues to hold a strong lead with younger voters in the primary. Among voters under 50, Sanders received 37% support, followed by Warren with 22%, Biden with 15%, and Yang with 7%. Biden continues to lead with the 50 and older voters. Sanders holds a lead among Hispanic or Latino voters with 36% support, followed by Biden with 23% and Warren with 22%. Sanders leads by a smaller margin with white voters, and Biden continues to lead with African American voters, 42%, a sizable margin over Warren, 18%, and Sanders, 70%. Buttigieg has 7% as opposed to 0% if you look nationally, or close to 0%. Looking at ideology, Sanders leads with very liberal voters with 45% support. That's interesting because I remember reading something recently where Warren led Sanders with very liberal voters, whatever that means. It probably means very neoliberal voters. But Yeah, I've unpacked that idea in another show, so I won't go into it now. Among those who supported Hillary Clinton in the 2016 primary, Biden leads with 40% support, followed by Warren with 19% and Sanders and Buttigieg with 12%. It's interesting. This is relevant to the Bernie or bust movement. Among those who supported Sanders in the 2016 primary, 48% still support him. So Bernie has the most loyal supporters. When asked if they would definitely vote for the candidate or if they could change their mind, Sanders supporters are the most committed to their preferred candidate, as 71% of his supporters said they will definitely vote for him. 60% of Biden supporters are solidly committed, whereas 46% of Warren supporters and 31% of Buttigieg supporters said the same, which is substantially smaller loyalty numbers. When asked if they would support the Democratic nominee for president regardless if he or she was not their first choice, in other words, they're asking if the respondents are vote blue no matter who, 68% said they were, and 15% said they were somewhat likely to vote blue no matter who. 93% of Buttigieg supporters reported that they were very likely to support whatever nominee gets thrust in front of them in the Democratic primaries, followed with 80% for Warren and 77% for Biden supporters. The least likely, again, this is relevant to the Bernie or bust movement, the least likely to support the nominee of the top candidates were Sanders supporters, with only 61% reporting that they were very likely. Nobody cares about Michael Bloomberg or Deval Patrick. "61% are watching or following the political protests in Hong Kong." This is interesting to me because it shows how much other unrest and other situations in the world are on our radar. And you've got sample size and other and the way the sample was obtained. So this poll, this new Emerson poll, shows Bernie in a tie for the lead in the Democratic national primary race. Now let's look and see. Oh, I have to point out my beautiful here, Republican-Lite, for that smooth, arrogant flavor with a hint of crisp smirk. Finally, an option that thinks it's better than you. I'm saying that neoliberalism, I'm saying that the Clinton machine, I'm saying that President Obama's legacy are all the same thing. We've got the same arrogant flavor, hint of crisp smirk. We've got that with Elizabeth Warren too, based on her supporters' demographics. And there's no better way to explain that smirk, that arrogance, that supremacy, really, than listening to Aaron Mate. He's talking about Russiagate and saying that this is how this smirky group of people continue to keep power. It's really insightful. Aaron Mate is one of the brightest people on the left or right, and you just have to hear him to understand how insightful he is.
Meanwhile, you have the Clinton campaign, and even before the election, they were latching onto this talking point that they had developed as of Trump as a Putin puppet. And after they lose the election in the surprise, shocking loss, they have a meeting, as is reported in the book Shattered, within 24 hours of Hillary Clinton's concession speech, and they decide that this election was not on the up and up, and that one of the main reasons they lost was James Comey, the FBI director, who came out with an October surprise, but also Russia. And they decide very deliberately to push that narrative above all else. And from that point, we have a nonstop effort blaming Russia and blaming stolen emails for the loss of the Clinton campaign. Zero self-reflection on the part of the Clintons and their people for why they actually lost. And there's a very good reason for that, because honest self-reflection would mean looking critically at your own policies. And given the fact that so many people were duped into believing that Trump was a working class champion who was going to take on the neoliberal establishment, for Democrats to transform and to actually offer a real alternative to Trump and show people why that was a con, that would mean challenging their own privileged role within that system and basically giving up their role as the beneficiaries of the corrupt system that Trump fooled people into thinking he was opposing. And then we have the media.
That was really good because they clapped, rightfully so, because he's showing how Donald Trump is saying what the people want to hear. And what the people want to hear is what Bernie is actually attempting to produce. Trump's faux populism is what grabbed a lot of the voters in swing states. So the smirky Democrats, they want to say, well, what do you think about Bernie supporters who could vote for Trump, who could vote directly for Trump as opposed to Joe Biden or Elizabeth Warren or Pete Buttigieg? And they just want to smirk and call them idiots. But if what the people want is what Trump is promising, and you deny them someone who can truly give it to them, Bernie Sanders, then why not vote for somebody who's promising what they need instead of somebody who's telling them why they can't have what they need, which is all of the Democrats. So it makes more sense than you realize. I know truck drivers. I know a lot of truck drivers. And I know that especially the independent truck drivers are seeing through Donald Trump's bullshit. They're calling him on it. They're saying, look, you didn't do any better for us, in swing states especially, than Barack Obama, which was a pretty low bar. And so we're still looking. We don't think any of the Democrats are going to give us what we need, but we don't think you are either. So if we do ever trust somebody to provide the kind of populism that the working class needs, we already know it isn't you, Donald. So we're waiting to see somebody who actually can follow through. They're afraid. 76% of truckers are Republicans, so they're afraid of the S word. And so if they keep getting that shoved in their faces, they'll say, oh yeah, Bernie Sanders. They'll say he's old. They'll say he's crazy. They'll say he's a socialist. So they don't really think about him, but they ought to. And if Bernie's message keeps resounding as it has so far with working class people of all races, of all different demographics, then especially with young people, then you're going to see, I think, truckers come around. And there are more truckers than any other occupation in the United States. I think you'll also see teachers. You'll already see teachers on board for Bernie. A lot of teachers. You see a lot of students, a lot of college students. You see a lot of first-time voters. You see a lot of post-millennial voters who are on board with Bernie Sanders. And even to the point of calling themselves a Bernie or bust generation. There's a New York Times contest-winning author, 17-year-old, who wrote an essay, and in the essay she said that young people are the Bernie or bust generation. And if they're that excited about Bernie and they're that upset about the DNC rigging last time, and they seem to get their information from better places than CNN, MSNBC, or the Washington Post or New York Times corporate supposedly liberal media, they get their information from other places that are more reliable, such as Aaron Mate here, then they're going to be the Bernie or bust generation. And they may pile into the streets. They may wave their picket signs. They may occupy, and they may do what people in Brazil are doing, and other places in South America, Central America are doing, or in France are doing. And they may say, enough is enough. We're going to do whatever it takes to end the plutocratic regime. We're going to get through this, and we're going to find out our information from places that the moneyed people don't want us to find it out from, and we're going to mount a revolution, a true revolution. Let's look at what both Crystal and Sagar have a really good show here. they always say it's a good show, and it always is a good show, but these points right here are especially salient.
Is that part of the reason that so many Democratic voters are scared is because Obama basically promised them the moon and then delivered neoliberal corporatism.
Right.
And so they're like, whoa, we're scared of Bernie and Warren.
What he's about to say will make more sense if you realize that he's a self-identified conservative. So even though he loves Bernie, seemingly, he comes at things from a more conservative perspective as compared to Crystal.
Warren, but particularly at Bernie, because he's promising like a true revolution, and we gave that guy a chance. You know, the guy with the funny name, he was promising us these amazing things, and we believed in him, and he didn't deliver. And so Bernie has to make the case that he can actually deliver.
I think that there is such ingrained, like, conventional wisdom over decades of Democrats having beat into their heads that you have to triangulate, you have to be a centrist to win. And almost no data, like, it doesn't matter how much data you hold up that that's not the case. That Bill Clinton didn't actually run as a centrist, he ran as a populist. Right. That Barack Obama did not run as, like, I'm going to sell out to Goldman Sachs. He ran as, like, this sort of more populist, revolutionary movement building type of candidate. And
Hope and change.
Hillary Clinton, who did run as the centrist, lost. Not to mention, over the years when Obama was in office, if you looked down ticket, I mean, we got decimated across the country. Democrats got destroyed in state house after state house, lost the House, lost the Senate, et cetera, et cetera. So this sort of just let's fall back on centrism thing doesn't work, but it's been so ingrained with the Democratic base that it's hard to overcome. And I do think that is the hurdle for Bernie Sanders, convincing people that he could really beat Donald Trump. Right. Poll after poll shows that he can, right? Shows that him doing...
It's possible.
Doing well...
It's not possible for Warren, I don't think.
I don't think so either. Yeah. And this is what's funny to me, is that a lot of people are going to Pete as the electability candidate. I'm like, this guy doesn't... Of everybody, he doesn't stand a shot at all.
Please nominate Pete.
I mean, there's, like, no chance that he would win. And so it just goes again to show you how strong that instinct of, like, well, he's a centrist, so he could win. He's a centrist, so he could win. When, you know, if you just look at the polling and the data and the response to him, there's no way that guy would win.
No, that's not what people want. But
to Crystal's credit, she actually spoke on her show about the data of Thomas Piketty regarding poor and poorly educated voters. That isn't out there very much, and their show. This episode has 19,000 views. They have more than 2,000 likes on this particular show. They have lots of subscribers, 156,000 subscribers. And so they actually talked about Thomas Piketty on their show. Otherwise, you won't get a lot of his extensive research on the voting habits of poor and poorly educated voters, not only in the United States, but also in the United Kingdom and in France. And so what Crystal keeps talking about is populism. Now, the last thing to say here is that whether or not you like neoliberalism, whether or not you want to vote for it in the form of Joe Biden or Elizabeth Warren or Pete Buttigieg, as they were alluding to there, you're not going to get a defeat of Donald Trump that way. It's just not going to happen. So this article, Bernie or Bust isn't the main story, even in swing states, makes the point that because of Bernie or Trumpers in swing states, you're destined to lose if you run an establishment candidate against Donald Trump. The reason Donald Trump won last time is because he ran as a populist candidate. And the reason Barack Obama won, when he won, was he ran as a populist candidate. Same with Bill Clinton. So people are getting tired, not just in the last few election cycles, but probably more like in the last 70 years. The DNC has been rigged against populists for at least 100 years, I've shown in some of my research and articles on Medium. And so if the people are desperate for real change, and they've seen, if they're my age or older, they've seen the pendulum swing back and forth, Republican, Democrat, but with no real hope and change for the American worker. So if you're in a NAFTA-ravaged swing state, and your job has been offshored, you're not in any mood to listen to somebody say, well, here's another Democrat that's going to fix it. Well, here's another Republican that's going to fix it. You know damn well that neither is going to fix it based on what you've seen so far. So if you do get enough information, ladies and gentlemen, if you do get enough information about Bernie Sanders to think maybe there's a chance, especially since he's the only one saying that he could mobilize the labor force, whether you're a big union person or not, you have to say that if you're going to get things done, piling into the streets, waving signs is a lot more effective in most cases than voting. That's just a fact, Jack. So if you see the power of the potential power of a non-corrupt union movement, which is hopefully what Bernie's going to get going, then maybe you'll suspend your skepticism a little and say, okay, it's possible. It's possible that Bernie can really get it done, because he's not just going to wave his finger like with Elizabeth Warren. He's going to say, no, I'm mobilizer. I'm organizer in chief. Let's get the labor force upset and out in the streets, and let's take on these oligarchs. Let's take on these plutocrats. Let's take on Jeff Bezos. Let's take on the Walton family. Let's come at them. Let's go. Let's fix this. And not by voting, but by organizing and by denying our labor when necessary. That's the way to win this. And only Bernie is talking that way. Everyone else is just incrementalist, same old. So in this election cycle, 2 different Emerson polls indicate that the number of Sanders supporters who will vote directly for Donald Trump in the general election if Sanders is not the Democratic nominee are even higher than last time. That is the fact that we have to put in front of the comfortable, centrist, supremacist, suburban, white, liberal, neoliberal voters. We have to get the word out that they're not going to get Pete. They're not going to get Elizabeth. They're not going to get Joe. No way in hell. They're just not. We can show who they are. We can show who Pete, Elizabeth, and Joe really are. They're just Barack Obama and George W. Bush wrapped up in one. But that's not going to do it if they believe that their own comfort will be continued at the expense of those lower down the socioeconomic ladder. So unless we play hardball here, unless we say, look, you don't have a chance in hell of defeating Donald Trump. If you really want to defeat him, and you're not just a crony of the corporatists who pretend you want to defeat him, but would much rather have Donald Trump than Bernie Sanders, in that case, go screw yourself. I don't have anything to say to you. But if you really do want to defeat Donald Trump, there's only one way you're going to do it, and that's to unite behind Bernie now, before the primaries start. And not only yourself voting Democrat, voting in the primaries for Bernie Sanders, but getting the word out to other people. If you're a blue-collar, hard-working trucker, you also need to get people to understand that Bernie Sanders, whether you think he's a long shot or not, whether you're afraid of the S word or not, he's the shot. He's the chance that we have. You'll not get another chance like this in your lifetime. It's not going to happen. This is your window. Whether you're skeptical or not, we've got to go for it. We've got to try this. So that's all I got for you today. Tell your smirking friends they need to stop smirking and vote for Bernie.
Get on board the Bernie bus train. Come get on board the Bernie bus train. Once you hear that clickety-clack, there ain't no time for turning back. Go get on board